Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of the Artish Podcast. I'm so excited to be starting this podcast because I've been wanting to do any sort of podcast for the longest time, whether it was art or just me talking about other things too. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Poprollarts. I also go by Pop on the internet. I'm aiming to become a full-time artist eventually and currently aspiring artist. But if you're interested in checking out my work, feel free to look at the links below. I currently have an Instagram and this YouTube page, hoping to expand into Twitter, but we'll see how that goes. So other than the fact that I thought making a podcast was fun, you might be wondering what else made me want to start a podcast in the first place. Well, during a period of my life, I was very addicted to watching other people's podcasts. Podcasts like Two Hot Takes that gave advice to their viewers about, am I the asshole in a situation? Or Trash Taste that talked about their Japanese culture, anime, and their life adjusting in Japan. One podcast that I was very into when I was crocheting or I just needed to zone out was the Cozy Crochet Podcast, where which she would display all the work she did in that month for the week, talk about patterns, do giveaways, just give us updates on her life. And I loved it. I felt like podcast was getting an insight about these creators' lives, and I enjoyed listening to other people talk about it. And thought maybe I could do that too, but I honestly didn't want to do it alone. The amount of times I try to start up a podcast is ridiculous. At first, I tried to start one up with my roommate of 4 years because late at night we would talk about stupidest things because we were so tired. Some of the conversations were like, what do you think is the world's favorite cereal? Or is it Reese's or Reese's? And the list kept going on and on. Unfortunately, we both ended up graduating college and we never had time throughout the school year to start the podcast, and we don't have time now because we're both working individuals. During college, I even tried to get my other two roommates in on some kind of podcast, but we had a lot of schoolwork and our different schedules gave us no time to start one together. I was going to call it Until Graduation because it was our last year together as college seniors and upcoming graduates. And once we graduated, we were just going to end the podcast there. But like I said, it just never ended up happening. Eventually, I asked my brother if he wanted to start a podcast with me called Why Don't We, where we talked about things we dislike and hated in the world. But he started working, and on his free time, he doesn't really want to spend it doing a podcast. I don't know why, but I was so determined to start a podcast with somebody, anybody, and I never felt like I could do it on my own. Until now, I guess. I thought it was possible to do a podcast to begin with because my college provided an opportunity for students to host their own radio show, and some people I knew hosted their own radio show playing Dungeons and Dragons live, and they had viewers listen in on their campaign via the radio station. I thought it was pretty neat. Like, if they can do a radio show about D&D, I could make a podcast about art and other things I wanted to do too. I was also inspired by other artists on the YouTube platform to feel the need to want to start an art-themed-ish podcast. People like Thanks Shoe, Blue Citrus, Paloma the Peach, Apple Cheeks, Birdie Tam. They did a lot of studio vlogs or gave advice to new artists or artists in general, and I thought it was really nice. And if those YouTubers were able to make vlogs and tips and all of that, I thought maybe I'd be able to talk about art in my own way too. But yeah, the reason why I created this podcast to begin with is because I really wanted to talk about art, but also the artist struggles and anything that I really wanted to talk about. So artists just seemed appropriate. I also wanted to make this podcast to inspire other people that you don't need much to start doing whatever you want to do. All you have to do is start it and see where it goes. And that's what I'm doing. I got some tips from Buzzsprout Learn How to Podcast YouTube channel on how to start a podcast, how to format, how to edit, and things like that. And by the way, anyone who I mention in this podcast episode, I will be linking below if you ever want to check them out. But like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I recently just graduated college, and for those of you who don't know, I co-majored in art and communications. But it wasn't always the easiest decision to decide what I was going to major in. When I just graduated high school, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, but I was definitely sure that I was going to go to college because my mom wanted me to be quote unquote successful, and it just seemed like the only next step I could think of. To be honest, my final decision to go to college was made in spite of my uncle. I got accepted into a lot of the big name schools in my area and was considering going to community college instead. The reason is because those colleges didn't provide me with a lot of financial aid support, and I didn't want to go to the big name schools because a lot of people I knew in high school were planning on going there too. My uncle told me that if I went to community college, I would never be good enough or successful enough, and that really insulted me. My brother went to community college and I considered him to be just as successful as other people could be. He was offending my family. So in spite, I applied to a no-name college that was very far away from where I lived, that I received a free application for in my email, and I got accepted. I would say that it was one of the better decisions that I made in life. Me and only one other person that I knew from high school went to the same college that I knew of because they offered us more financial aid compared to other educational institutions, and she was the one who introduced the college to me through email in the first place. We became roommates for 4 whole years. When I finally got to college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to major in, and I was undecided for almost 3 years. I hated the fact that choosing a major made me feel boxed in to that one particular category. Like as a math major, I would only be able to solve math problems, or as an English major, it would just be reading and writing. And I wanted to do everything, each and every single thing. I wanted to be an actor, I wanted to do music, but I was only allowed to choose one thing. And I had a hard time coping with that idea that I had to choose only one. So throughout 3 years that I was in college, I switched majors a lot. I went through fashion and failed the course. I went through biology and failed the course. I went through all these things and failed courses, and that made me realize that they weren't right for me. Eventually, I ended up seeing one of the school counselors, and I took a test to see what I would enjoy majoring in the most. And the ones that I got were art and communication. But at first, I was considering just doing full-time art. But there's many uncertainties that come with majoring in art, and my mom was also very concerned. We were worried about how expensive art supplies would be. Would I be able to make a career out of art? Was it something that I'm positive I can rely on in the future as a money-making tool? But I wasn't confident enough in my art, and honestly, I'm still kind of not that confident now. Even though I have become more confident than before, I still am scared. And because of this fear, I majored or co-majored in communications because I thought if I couldn't secure a job in art, I'll definitely get one within communications, whether it's writing for the news, writing for blogs, just writing in general, or even doing my own research. And there's a lot of people who make a good livelihood from that major. Know that making money with your art isn't that great of a mindset. Like, I'm making this art so I can make money isn't the greatest mindset to have as an artist, but sometimes deemed necessary if you want to survive. But lately when I do art, I'm not focused on monetary aspect, more of I want to improve my own art for myself to eventually have others be interested in it as well. So before I actually confirmed that I was going to be a communications and art co-major, the art program at my college made us go through drawing 101, painting 101, sculpting 101. So I got to experience what it was like to make art at the college. And after that, I decided that this is something that I wanted to do. But even after choosing the art major with the communications, I still had a lot of decisions to make. And for those of you who don't know, I am the most indecisive person ever. After doing the fundamentals for the major, like sculpture 1, painting 1, all of that jazz, I had to choose whether I wanted to be in the painting track or the sculpting track. And I found that to be very hard to decide. I enjoyed sculpting. I was able to use my hands to create things without having to use paintbrushes or watercolor or any type of painting medium. And I enjoyed that I was able to bring my stories to life. The only issue about sculpting was that I would have no room for these huge sculptures that I really wanted to make, especially because the studio for my future would just be my bedroom. I like painting as well, but it had a lot of things to do with my depression. I kind of felt like I was endlessly doing the same thing. I would have to paint. I used oil, I used watercolor, I used all different types of painting mediums, and I didn't enjoy it as much as sculpting, but I considered it more practical to live with. Like, I would rather live with a bunch of canvases in my room than a bunch of 10 feet sculptures. So I ended up choosing painting after a long decision, but I enjoy it when I can do things that make things that I make for myself, if that makes sense, rather than for like a prompt or anything, just what I feel like I want to paint at the moment. And that's what I've been doing with my art so far. I have been sculpting just a little bit, but I ran out of clay, so I definitely need to get more. But I've been working on these fairy houses, and I was inspired by another YouTuber called Where the Gnomes Live, and she has like a clay recipe, and she uses aluminum foil masking tape to create these really nice sculpture-esque, doll-esque things, and I thought that was really cool. There was another artist that I watched on YouTube as well, but I forgot their name, and they made their own fairy houses and hid them around the community park, and I thought that was such a great idea, so I want to make fairy houses and hide them around like a park or a forest so people can find them and maybe take pictures or whatever. I just think that would be so cute. I don't know. So the whole premise of this podcast is that I'll be recording myself like painting or drawing or doing some type of artwork, and I voice over it and talk about the art that I've made or other things related to art while talking about other things that I really want to talk about. In this case, we just talked about my college. For this particular assignment, I was working on a piece for my Painting 2 class, and the assignment was to paint something that showed the passing of time or the change in something. And the medium that I used was oil paints on a gessoed plywood. Basically, I got your basic plywood from any hardware store, and I had them cut it to the size that I wanted in the store. Sometimes I had to cut it myself with a saw because Home Depot didn't have their saw working at the time. So that was a bit of a struggle, but I ended up doing it. And gesso is kind of this white-ish paint-like material that you kind of just put on the plywood. I put like 2 or 3 layers, but the reason why you put it on the plywood is so that the paint sticks or stays on it better, and it changes the color so the paint's more visible, especially because I was using a white gesso. But I believe there's other kinds of gessos as well, like black, depending on what you're trying to do with your art. But before this class, the only other paints I ever worked with were acrylic or watercolor. So oil painting was a whole new area for me, and I honestly kind of don't like them just because I don't really understand the concept of underpainting. I don't know how people are able to capture like shadows and light using the underpainting. So my goal is to hopefully work on that as an artist now. I think I'm going to try doing it with one color pencil, like practice the capturing of light and shadow using just one color so that eventually I'll be able to practice with underpaintings. But yeah, I definitely struggled with creating underpaintings throughout the school year, but also the fact that oil takes a long time to dry and I'm very impatient. So most of my paintings ended up being wet on wet, which didn't make my painting pop out as much as if I waited for it to dry and painted on top of it. So I found a lot of the pieces that I did in oil painting turned out to be be really flat. But it's okay. It's all for the practice. But if you guys happen to know any creators or YouTubers who are really good at oil painting, please suggest them to me so that I can study their techniques. But yeah, the concept for this painting was time and change. And I really wanted to capture the idea of as time goes on or whatever happens, our emotions are always constantly changing from anger to happiness to sadness to envy, and they all can cross-contaminate. So it could end up being envy turning to rage or rage becoming sadness, and it moves on like that. And I wanted to capture it within a painting. It's like at one moment you could be extremely happy about the situation, but then eventually it makes you feel sad or angry or envious. So these different emotions, I wanted to try to capture the change in emotions over time. It was around this time that I also found out that I had bipolar depression, and that made me want to do the piece even more. And because of this, the medium that I used, or the subject that I used for my painting, were self-portraits of myself going through different emotions. So before I started painting, I sketched out self-portraits using pencil onto the gessoed plywood, and I looked online for different facial expressions that people use depending on what emotion that they're feeling. So when people were happy, it was big smiles. If they were angry, their eyebrows were turned downwards and their mouth was frowning. And so I tried to apply that to my paintings as well. First, the painting was also kind of color blocked. So this one section was blue, this one section was yellow, green, so on and so forth. But I thought instead of having just the one color in the area, that I would drip paint so that the paint would kind of fall into the other sections. So I would drip yellow and it would drip into the red area, or I'll drip red and it'll drip into the green area, so it could show that the emotions are being seeped into one of another. The way that I painted this as well was very rough, and my class described it like it was a war painting with the way I kind of did my strokes and everything. But I think that makes a lot of sense because emotions are always at war, and sometimes they're not, and they're blending into each other. The fact that I made it harsh made it seem like emotions are always unpredictable and you never know what it's gonna be as time goes on. And sometimes it's just hard to control what emotions we are actually having. So for those of you who are interested in what materials I was using to make this painting, I use Winsor and Newton oil paint and just a brush set that I got from Dollar Tree. So I had a can of turpentine and I used this thing called liquid. And I'll link all that stuff below too if you ever want to check it out. The reason why I was using oil paints to begin with is because painting 2 was an oil painting themed class. We would have different themes throughout the school year and we would have to make oil paintings based off of those themes. And like I said earlier, the theme of this painting was time and change. In my opinion, I prefer painting on a piece of wood versus a canvas just because a piece of wood doesn't have the same bounce a canvas does. I like the more stability of the wood. Before this class, I never even touched oil paints. Up to the point of taking the class, I've only ever used acrylic paints or watercolor paints. So it was interesting to experiment with this new medium. But honestly, I still have difficulties understanding how to use oil, and it takes so long to dry in comparison to acrylic. Eventually, I want to make a video where I show you guys all the acrylic paintings, watercolor paintings, and kind of describe my process and what made me do those certain paintings to begin with. So it's kind of like a sketchbook tour, except I'm just showing my paintings. Be curious on exactly where I was painting this oil painting to begin with. Usually, I'll be painting an oil painting in the open studio my college provided, and there's like a lot of easels around and space and all the materials you may need. But I was doing this assignment very last minute as I didn't have a lot of time outside of my dorm room to paint and go to the studio and paint. So I brought all the supplies that I needed to my dorm room, which isn't the best because oil painting needs lots of ventilation, especially with the materials that I was using. I was pretty much breathing in fumes and I don't recommend it. That's why I was wearing a mask in the video. My dorm room literally has no windows or open windows for it. So for the past couple of days after making the painting, my room still smelled like different types of fumes from the oil paints and the turpentine. It wasn't great, but because I was the only one sleeping in my dorm room, it didn't really matter for me. I think it's kind of funny because when artists do art studio tours, their desk looks so clean, but in reality, my room is a mess. My desk is a mess. Everything is everywhere. It is not the most appealing. I definitely think it would be cool to do a video showing what I would want my artist studio to look like versus how it usually looks. But for those of you who don't know, my current art studio is just a desk in my bedroom, which I use for other things other than art, like laptops, games, things like that. Idealistically, one of my goals is to eventually rent or have a room dedicated to art within the area. That's why I'm currently working to try to reach that goal. But now that I graduated, I have semi-free time to work on art, except for the fact that I'm working. So there's a lot of things that I want to do with my free time. Like lately, I've been wanting to take a wheel throwing class and I applied, so hopefully I get in. I've hand built before, but I've never really messed with the wheel. I also want to take things like cooking classes, and there's so many things that I want to do on my free time. I have to figure out how to narrow it down. Lately for art, I've been practicing digital art because I got Procreate for like $9.99 on my iPad. And so I wanted to practice how to use Procreate versus different programs that I'm used to, which are like Photoshop, Illustrator, and the free app that I'm currently using, Krita. The tutorials I'm following is actually made by the Procreate people themselves, which I really like because it's the creators giving a tutorial on how to use their app. And they have a beginner series, which I've been practicing using so I can understand all of the functions there is to Procreate. I really want to get better at digital art just because it's easier to create stickers or prints because of the digital aspect. And like I said, eventually I want to start my own art business because eventually I want to start doing work in something I actually love rather than doing work for survival. I've been trying to find more artist opportunities that I could take advantage of within my area and artist opportunities in general just so I could get my work out there. An artist opportunity that I try to participate in every year now is the pet portrait contest by the Animal Rescue League of Berks County. Pet owners donate towards the fundraiser, and artists who volunteer gets a picture of their pet and we can paint them, draw them in any sort of medium, mail it to the ARL, and they get their paintings and they get a vote on which ones they like the best online through donation. And it's a really fun event and I highly recommend it for people who are interested, and I'll link the thing for this year below as well as last year's if you want to see the previous submissions. But yeah, I want to find more artist opportunities within my local area. I was watching some of Katie Mai and she found some opportunities through Facebook, and now I'm questioning whether I should make a Facebook or other social media platforms in order to find more opportunities. I do have an Instagram and I did get an ad for an artist opportunity, but the deadline for submissions is so close, I can't even apply for it. When I was at the college, they provided students an opportunity to share their artwork through this annual student juried event where students could submit their work throughout the school year, have it judged, and see if it made the cut for the museum that the school had. We had the choice of selling our artwork or not selling it. It was up to the artist. But the artworks would be judged by the jury, and whoever they liked the best would get awards. It is a great opportunity for students to put their work out there. And if you're interested in purchasing from the student jury event, I'll be listing the name of the college museum as well. Last year, I also purchased a couple of student works myself, and I'll be doing a video on that because I still have yet to open it. But yeah, like like I said, I'm hoping to get more artist opportunities or find more artist opportunities in my area that I'm able to participate in on my free time. Lately, I haven't even had the time to open a sketchbook, but when I do, I am practicing using this manga book called The Complete Guide to Drawing Action Manga, a step-by-step artist handbook by Shoko Makoto Sawa. And if you guys don't know, my art style is very realistic. I don't really know how to make it 2D or animated like. And so I've been practicing that, but also I've been practicing how to draw action poses because I don't know how to do that. But according to my brother, he thinks that my practice looks more like a graphic novel-esque rather than a manga or anime style, which I totally agree on. The reason why I'm practicing this style is because eventually I want to start making a webtoon based off of this concept idea that I've had. Webtoons are free to make for anyone, so if anyone's interested in making their own webtoon, all you really have to do is get the app and get started. Lately, when I have time, I've been reading a lot of different webtoons. Some of them include Omniscient Reader, School Bus Graveyard, Everything is Fine, The Horizon, Stagtown, Yuna and Kawa-chan, Boyfriend of the Dead, and The Cursed Princess Club. I'll get more into the idea of what kind of webtoon I want to make later on, but for now I'll keep it a secret. The book I mentioned earlier though is very helpful in distinguishing different body types for male and female for when you're drawing in a manga style, but it's not accurate to real life body types as they only kind of show one type of body for the male and the female. But they tell you how to draw hands, draw action poses, draw figures, so it's very helpful and there's a lot of different references within the book that helps me out a lot. And I don't know any artist who likes drawing hands and feet, but let me know if you do because I honestly absolutely hate it. It's actually what I've been practicing right now, drawing hands and feet, and I've been using Pinterest a lot because I've seen a lot of artists use it. On there you could pin a lot of things you want to practice or draw or reference, and it's just really helpful to come up with ideas for paintings or any type of artwork you're doing too. I'll be linking my Pinterest account below if you want to see things that I've added too for references as well. But yeah, like I said, I've been trying to practice the anime-ish style and I bought this really small sketchbook and I've tried drawing anime eyes in it as well. But the reason why I really like this small sketchbook is that I can carry it wherever, and I also have a portable watercolor painting set. So I can pretty much sketch or draw or paint on the go wherever I am. And I think it's nice, especially if I ever decide to go to the art museum and paint on the spot. But yeah, that's what I've been wanting to do when I'm free, like go to the museum on their discount Sundays and paint or sketch whatever painting or artwork that I'm interested in. I actually purchased the watercolor portable set from the art museum from the last time that I went. And I really love the art museum store because they sell so many interesting things that artists made or are helpful for artists themselves. Yeah, there is a lot of interesting things there, and some of the things I found were like bird calling whistles or ceramic works made by local artists. I even bought some art supplies for myself from the art museum, like those kneadable erasers, the 2B pencils, and etc. I'm hoping that I'll be able to visit the art museum again when I have free time just by myself, because when I went with other people like my mom or my friends, they always want to rush through the museum and I want to take my time exploring the arts. Funniest thing is, before I got my current job working at an arcade, I applied to the art museum to work in their store, but they never got back to me, so that was quite unfortunate and it made me kind of sad, but it's okay. I just have to keep in mind that there's a lot of other opportunities that I can have and will have, and hopefully that they'll pop up eventually. I just can't predict when. So yeah, that is the end of the first episode of the Artish Podcast. And I hope you all enjoyed listening to me talk about art and other aspects of my life too. I'm hoping to do more episodes for this podcast in the future, but it does take up a lot of my time. Just because my work schedule only gives me the morning to edit and do all the things that I need to do. But I'm hoping to have more episodes out soon. I plan to have other videos up as well in the future regarding reviews or just trying new things. So I hope you guys are looking forward to those videos. But for now, I'll be signing off. But if you're interested in checking me out, I have an Instagram as of right now at Poprollarts, or I guess reach out to my business email. And if you like this podcast or any other content I'll be making in the future, feel free to subscribe to this channel. You don't have to subscribe, I'm not forcing you. But yeah, I hope to see you all in this channel again if you ever want to stop by. But like I said, I'll be signing off. I hope everyone is having a great day wherever and wherever they may be.